Have you had difficulty lifting your foot up and tying your shoe? A friend of mine from our Tai Chi practice told me about this difficulty she has. As I tried to do the same thing myself, I noticed that the lifted leg hip socket seems really tight. So if you have this concern, this practice could be for you. We'll need a chair and blocks. We'll begin seated. Sit forward on your chair, and if it feels like the pelvis is slightly lower than your knees, it's time to elevate. You can sit on blocks, you can sit on a blanket, but elevate so that the pelvis is slightly higher than the knees. This allows for a little bit more freedom in doing this pose. With this higher height, you can hold the right knee in and just move it in circles so that you can warm up the hip, and see if you can start to take it in bigger circles, maybe just holding on to the knee, drawing it in circles, and take the circle the opposite direction as well. Place your right foot down. Pull the left knee in and move it in smaller circles to begin with. Then increase your circles. Draw from the pelvis to the kneecap as if you're trying to push the kneecap into the palm of the hand. Go in the opposite direction and try to make the circles nice and big. Release your foot down. Now pull the right knee in. And so often we can get a lot of hip flexion, but it's that movement of the leg to the right that it causes a little bit more difficulty. So hold on to the right foot and just move the foot side to side. Or if that is difficult for you, just hold on to your shin and move it side to side, move the leg side to side. It's a way to lubricate that area. It's a way to get a little bit more fluidity in the movement. Now release your right foot down. Hug the left leg in. See about holding on to the leg, and it might feel slightly different than the other side, which is very normal. Hold on to the ankle, the heel, the shin bone, and move side to side as if you're rocking the baby. This is a little bit more accessible in a chair than seated on the yoga mat. So it's just nice to start the practice in this way. Now release the foot down. Hug the right knee in again. Now as if you had to tie your shoelaces to make the shoe accessible, just part the foot to the outside of the knee. And maybe you can just inch your left foot just a little bit further away from you as a way to just make this a little bit easier for the hip. But now with this elevation, it makes the pose so much easier. With the thumb on the inside and the four fingers to the outside, press down and externally rotate the flesh. I'm using two hands as a way to just increase just a little bit more movement. And now you see that the knee draws down. You have a little bit more rotation in the femur. In the top of the thigh there, you get a little bit more freedom. And now try to keep that and just allow your arms to hang as you draw down slightly. Inhale and rise up. Place your right foot down, lift your left leg up, park your left foot somewhere to the outside of the knee, and you want the ankle to be free. Ankle's not seated there. With the fingers to the outside of the pelvic area, maybe even the second hand, just encourage right at the crease line to externally rotate to bring a little bit more freedom there. And in this case, it doesn't feel like I'm opening the pelvis that much, but I am feeling a bit of freedom now in that area. Just a little bit more room to move. And you can just softly draw down just slightly here. Inhale and lift yourself up. Sometimes it's hard to come to the floor for seated postures, but sitting on the floor is very helpful for us. So let's come to the floor if possible. If that's not possible, get a second chair that you can put your feet to. Sukhasana is a cross-legged pose. And when you do it, you want to do it in both ways, crossing one leg first and one leg second. And so often we have a favorite side that we always go to, so it's always good to do both sides. Similar to what we just did, if the knees are higher than the pelvis, we added elevation when we're seated in the chair. My knees are higher than my pelvis. So sit on blocks and see if that makes a difference for you. Now the knees are roughly in line with the pelvis. I'm working the feet nicely. At the cross at the middle of the shin, I engage the baby side of my feet and just draw forward slightly as a way of opening the pose nicely. And rise up. Now let's cross the opposite way. Same thing. The shin in back is pressing the belly of the calf muscle in front, and the front shin is pulling back. So as you press the outside edges of the heel, you press very firmly, you sit tall, you try to keep that length of the spine, try not to round as you draw down. Inhale and rise up. So if getting on the floor is a little challenging for you, let's try it a second time in the chair. Sitting in the chair, we have the same issue as you take the feet to the chair in front. And sometimes just taking the feet a little farther from you makes it more accessible. But if you can, pull the feet in and come to that form of the pose with the knees. Now it looks like one knee is especially high, so it's time to elevate once again. Now elevated, you find so much more freedom in the pose. As you draw down, maybe you can even hold on to the back of the chair, maybe taking you a little bit deeper in your forward bend. Rise up. And now cross your legs the opposite way. Press the back shin bone into the front calf muscle. Keep your legs active. Draw forward, keeping the spine nice and long. Just allow yourself a little ease as you come into the pose. And inhale and lift yourself up and come to a seated position. Before we come to a standing position to do a few yoga poses that will continue to open the pelvic area, there's one tip I was given regarding keeping the hips open in everyday activities. And one everyday activity is getting out of a chair or getting out of the seat in your car. So often, after driving, turning off the engine, you open the door and you put one foot outside, one foot still inside, and you lean into the foot on the outside and lift up. I want to offer you the tip that was given to me by a very astute yoga teacher. As you get out of the car, step to the side, like you always do, but step the other foot to the side as well. So now your pelvic points are facing out, and you can more easily, without turning in such a way that you affect the SI joint in the movement, you can lift off the seat easily. Just a tip, an everyday yoga practice tip that is going to be really helpful for your pelvic area. Let's come to a standing position now. Step wide. Turn your right toes out. When we were seated, we put our hands right in the pant leg crease to create just a little bit more freedom in that area. So see if you can keep the back leg really solid and steady and create just a little bit more freedom with the right knee over the right ankle. Just make any adjustments you can. And maybe you can kind of lift up and drop in, lift up and drop in. Lift slightly out of the pose and draw down into the pose. 2 more, just easy movements here. Now come to the fullness of Warrior 2, Virabhadrasana number 2. Keep your back leg strong. Just drop a little bit deeper, if possible, into the front leg. Now inhale and lift out of the pose. Come to the opposite side. So turn your right toes so the right foot is parallel to the edge of the mat. Turn your left toes out. Bend your knee. Same thing, just kind of create a little bit more freedom by working the pant leg crease. Thumb is on the inside, fingers on the outside. Just getting a little bit more freedom and add movement. See if you can kind of pulse in and out of the pose while keeping this back leg really strong. Just draw in and out. Do this 3 more times. Maybe you can slow it down. Maybe you can create just a little bit more fullness in the movement. Now from here, reach your arms out. Come to the fullness of the pose. Take your gaze out over your left hand and inhale, lift yourself up out of the pose. We'll do a slight variation to that same pose. Turn your left toes in, turn your right toes out, bend your right knee to come to the form of the pose. Now lift up your right heel. See if lifting up the right heel create just a little bit more opening here in the pelvis. With the heel lifted, just drop the pelvis into the pose more. Now take your heel down and do that 2 more times. Lift your heel up. Can you drop in a little bit more fully? And down. And 1 more time, lift the heel high and draw it down. Inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, release out of the pose. Come to the opposite side. Turn your right toes in, left toes out. Bend your left knee. Lift up your left heel. Draw it down. Lift the heel up so it's on tiptoes practically, and down. When you lift the heel up, can you drop into the pose deeper? Now with the heel down, come to the fullness of Virabhadrasana 2. And inhale, lift yourself out of the pose. Come to a seated pose. If you can do the seated pose on the floor, by all means. Have your feet straight forward. Bend your right knee. Take your right knee to the side, and if the right knee is elevated quite a bit, or you feel that this is quite uncomfortable for you, support that with the block. Just prop that up, prop the knee up. Bend your left knee and draw that behind you, so you get a little thigh stretch. Now draw yourself over toward the right side. and rise up. Now twist. Take your right hand to your right heel. Turn your heart toward your left leg. Release out of the pose. Let's come to the opposite side. First, start with the legs straight forward. Bend your left knee. And again, if the knee does not want to come toward the earth, just support it so you have more freedom in the knee. Now bend the right knee and just draw that to the side. So it's a variation to a pigeon pose. Now let's draw over toward the left knee. Draw your heart down toward the knee. Inhale, lift up. Now draw toward the right knee. Just get this nice twisting action. And release yourself out of the pose. Come to lie down on your back with your knees bent. With your knees bent, take your right ankle to the outside of the left knee. Draw your right thigh in the same way that we've been doing when we're seated. We drew the knee away from our chest by opening up right at the pant leg crease, drawing the thigh bone back. Release your right leg. Take your left ankle to the outside of the right knee and just notice after doing these variations how you're starting to get a little bit more freedom in the pelvic area. Let your hands help you out by pressing the top of the femur right at the pant leg crease. It's getting a little bit more opening. And release. Step your left foot down and stretch your legs out. And just pause. Close your eyes. Sometimes when we have tightness in the hip area, going through variations, both in chair yoga and yoga on the mat, start to notice how these variations, if you're just patient and slow in the actions, you start to bring this level of awareness to the movement. In this resting pose of Savasana, just notice how heavy the pelvis feels. Draw your breath in through the nose and out through the nose. Just have this nice ease, a softness to your breath. Breathe in deep and out long. You breathe in deep and out long. You breathe in deep, out long. Thank you for joining me in this practice where we explore movement in the hip area. Enjoy your Savasana. Namaste.